All right. Time to move on, Reagan. I'm sorry. I know you're upset. Time to
That's
talk
right.
about the Miami Dolphins. Dolphins finished 11-6 last year. Their win total is at 9.5 this year. Just want to highlight something. The Dolphins went 10-1 against teams that missed the playoffs last year. They went 1-5, with their only win being against Dallas, against playoff teams. They were also outscored by 91 points in those 6 games versus playoff teams. And this year, they're projected to play. No, I'm sorry. They are playing 10 teams that finished over 500 last year. Projected 9 of them going to have a winning record this year. So, big step up in schedule difficulty here in that regard, but still Sharp projects the 8th easiest schedule in totality, but a lot more games against winning teams, which they've struggled against. Some key losses: Christian Wilkins, Robert Hunt, Xavier Howard, Emmanuel Ogbah, Andrew Van Ginkel, Connor Williams, and Jerome Baker. Some key adds: Jordan Brooks, Calais Campbell, Kendall Fuller, Aaron Brewer, Jonnu Smith, OBJ, and Jordan Poyer. Do the Dolphins eclipse 9.5 wins this year?
Yeah, barely. I got them going 10-7. I mean, even if they are the Dallas Dolphins or the Dallas Cowboys of the AFC, I still think they're going to do well in the regular season. I mean, when you have Waddle and Tyreek and the dynamic running back duo, which could be a trio this year. I know we're all kind of high on Jalen Wright and what they can do with him. So they have 3 obviously electric running backs. And the offensive line, obviously losing Robert Hunt's going to hurt, but I still expect them to be one of the better units in the league this year. And
I don't.
No?
No.
Well, still, I'm not even going to complain with that, but still, obviously with all that being said and the defense, I mean, you still got some good players out there. I mean, and obviously Chop Robinson, they spent what they take him 21 they took him at. So obviously they're expecting him to be a higher impact guy. I mean, if Jalen Ramsey, I know he's obviously getting older. He's not what he once was, but when he came back last year, it was pretty evident that he was making plays. I mean, I remember in that Jets Dolphins Thanksgiving game, he had a big pick. Javon Holland, also a guy who's very good. Remember when they took him in the second round out of Oregon, he's a bigger impact guy. So, and obviously getting guys like Chubb back this year, Jalen Phillips, and some of those other guys you expect, and adding Calais Campbell. I mean, the defensive line has some guys, so if they can get some pressure, it'll kind of take some pressure off that secondary as well. So I got them going 10-7. I don't think they'll go far in the playoffs, but I just find it too hard with how electric this offense will be at times that they can't win that many games.
Shit, I also got them at 10-7.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, I mean,
is not on this pod.
Yeah, yeah, not really, not yet. We'll see about Buffalo, but yeah, I mean, I really like Mike McDaniel as a head coach. I like how they adjusted their scheme to keep Tua healthy. He played his first full season last year and led the league in passing yards with over 4,600. He did have 14 interceptions, which is a little worrisome, but the 29 touchdowns made up for it. And, you know, I mentioned earlier how the team struggles against playoff teams. If you look at Tua against those playoff teams, he's significantly worse. The team is 3-12 in the last 2 years against playoff teams, and he's thrown more than 2 touchdowns in only one of those games. So if you're a gambling man, if you're a fantasy man, and you're streaming quarterbacks, if Tua is playing a playoff team, maybe go with the other option. But if he's playing a non-playoff team, you can predict that Tua is going to light their ass up. That's just what we've seen. The running backs were phenomenal last year, this running back core. They were top 3 in a ton of key metrics. They shifted to more of an outside zone scheme, which makes sense given that this is the fastest running back room in the league, and they dominated. Mostert was a stud. Career high 234 touches, 1187 total yards, and 21 touchdowns. Achane had 997 yards and 11 touchdowns on only 130 touches, which is why we see him going in round 2, maybe early round 3 in fantasy drafts right now. He averaged 7.8 yards per carry, which is the best in NFL history for someone in a season with at least 100 carries. The injury concerns are there, though, which is why he makes it a risky pick, which is why if you're going to go Achane, I kind of like taking the handcuff of Jalen Wright later on in the draft. He did miss 6 games last year, and there were 2 games in which he played only 9 total snaps. So he basically almost had a 1,000-yard season playing in 9 games, which is crazy. I mean, what needs to be said about Tyreek Hill? I mean, 13 touchdowns last year, almost had 2,000 yards. It was really close. Tua even came out and said that they were trying to get him that 2,000-yard mark, but maybe he does it this year. Waddle's gone over 1,000 yards in all 3 seasons in the league. So offensively, I love the weapons. I don't love the O-line. You lost Robert Hunt from an offensive line that was 31st in ESPN's pass block win rate the past season. Armstead has missed 11 games in 2 years with Miami, so he is vital to their success. He has to be healthy. But Tua's getting the ball out a lot quicker now. They're trying to protect them from injury, and it helped them last year be even more efficient, and he was able to play a full season. So I like what Mike McDaniel did with Tua, and it kind of protects some of those offensive line struggles, which is huge. Defensively, I have some question marks from a defense that was actually really good last season. Vic Fangio's gone, the mastermind that was running this defense, one of the more well-respected defensive minds in the entire game, has been doing it for decades. He's now back in Philly. Chubb, who led the team with 11 sacks last year in 16 games, had a disgusting 15.7% pressure rate, but he tore his ACL December 31st. So he's not ready yet. You have to wait for him to come back. Jalen Phillips had 6.5 sacks in 8 games before his Achilles tear. I'd imagine he's back before Chubb, but we don't know, which is why adding Chop Robinson in the first round was, he's not going to start when both those guys are back healthy, but he'd be a rotational guy. But big need right there, right now. And the value is there. I mean, Chop had the 11th best pressure rate amongst all Power 5 edge rushers last year. He never had the sack numbers that you love to see, but he has all the elite traits to develop into a stud. Just seems like your stereotypical Penn State outside linebacker type of guy. So I like the Chop addition. Linebackers, David Long is solid. Jordan Brooks is solid. Secondary, I love the secondary. Jalen Ramsey's only played 10 games last year, but he's back. He's a stud. Kendall Fuller was the lone bright spot in Washington's secondary last year. Javon Holland, you highlighted, is great at safety. And Poyer, only $2 million a year for a veteran presence that, yeah, he's on the decline, but he's still a serviceable, solid player and should be good at the back end of that defense to add some leadership. So love the secondary. The front will be good once they get those 2 guys back and Phillips and Chubb. I do think they fare a little bit better against winning teams this season. I got them at 10-7. The offense is just too explosive for me to have this team with the losing record.
Yeah, way too explosive. I mean, that's probably why we both have the same MVP. Tyreek Hill's mine.
Yeah, it's Tyreek Hill. Come on, dude. It's Tyreek Hill. I mean, we didn't even touch on how the offense looked when Tyreek was out of action last year for a little bit, but it just did not have the same pop, obviously. Like Jalen Waddle wasn't able to handle the full workload, and because then you put your pressure on Waddle and you have 2 burners out there that you can't go one-on-one. So it's definitely Tyreek Hill here.
Yeah, I mean, in fantasy owners were all licking their chops to see what Waddle could do. It, he just never. Everyone was like, "Oh, like what can this guy be in this span?" And it disappointed. So but I guess the X factor. Mine, I went a couple different ways. I went back and forth. Could it be the O-line? But mine ended up being Bradley Chubb and his health when he gets back, because he's a guy that obviously they spent a lot of capital to go get him from Denver. He's a guy we've seen be a double-digit sacks guy. So if he can get back, be healthy, return the forms, be a double-digit sack guy or close to it, because obviously he won't be playing a full season, so it might be tough to still get into the double digits. But if it's like evident as soon as he comes back that the pressure's up even more for the D-line, and I think he can just be a big impact. I really do. So he's my X factor.
I like the pick. I mean, you can go in the trenches both ways. You can go Phillips and Chubb coming back from injury. You can go the O-line. To play devil's advocate, I'll go the O-line right now. Keeping Tua upright. We've highlighted multiple times in this podcast. Tua is 1 hit away from it being a problem, and he's going to miss significant time. And then Miami's season's over because Skylar Thompson is not going to be that guy, even with the weapons they have. So I went with the offensive line. Just be better than last year. Tua's going to get the ball out quick. Just give him that time to make his reads. I love the little short motions they do. It's just really difficult to cover, and they run those stop routes, and Tua's going to be able to get the ball out. Just allow him that opportunity. So for me, I went with the offensive line, ensuring that Tua stays healthy. Your rookie of the year.
Yeah, so my rookie of the year, I ended up going with Jalen Wright just because I really do think he's going to be involved this year. I honestly, with Mostert, while he played while he was healthy last year. He's a guy who's dealt with injuries back with San Francisco. A-Chain, obviously, last year we saw he dealt with injuries, so I expect them to both miss times. And I think this is a team that has playoff aspirations. So I think no matter who's to miss time, they're going to kind of take their time with it because they have such good depth at the running back position. So I think he's going to be involved this year. I think he'll break that 100 touch mark between carries and receiving, but I think he's going to have a decent role for this team. And I think they're going to use him in a bunch of different ways. And Mike McDaniels has proven that he's a very dynamic play caller and likes to scheme up a lot of different things.
I like the pick. I went with Chop Robinson ultimately because he's going to be thrust into the starting lineup right away until those two guys get back. And I think he'll have a big impact. He just needs to. But, looking at this draft class in its entirety, I kind of like it a lot. I'm not going to go with Patrick Paul, the offensive lineman they took in the second round out of Houston. He started every game in his 5-year career at left tackle, but he's more of an insurance guy right now. He's not expected to start. Jalen Wright you can go with, but he is that third running back right now. But keep your eyes on Muhammad Kamara. They took in the 6th round an edge rusher. He did not play Power 5 ball, but in 4 games against Power 5 opponents over the last 2 seasons, he was actually dominant, including against Michigan, where he had several pressures and a sack. So for him to show up against that level of competition, he doesn't have the tools, which is why he fell to the 6th round, but the production was really good against Power 5 teams. So maybe with Chop there and Kamara there rotating in, he could have an impact. I don't know. Just something to keep an eye on. Muhammad Kamara. But I went with Chop Robinson.
Hey, that's interesting. Let me tell you that.
Huh. You like that?
Makes you think.
Who's your depoy?
So my depoy, I ended up going with, I don't know. You might give me, I don't know. I don't think you'll give me too much crap, but I ended up going with Javon Holland. I mean, from what he's proven, he's one of the
second best player in the secondary?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, because a lot of people are going to be like, oh, why wouldn't you go with Chubb or Ramsey, some of the bigger names? I feel like he's not a household name yet where he should be, but I think he's one of the best safeties in football. I mean, he's very dynamic when he gets the ball in his hands. I mean, we saw last year from that 90-whatever yard touchdown return on Black Friday. He's great. He's great. I mean, he's been everything they expected drafting him in the 2nd round a couple years back.
Yeah, I went with Jalen Ramsey, the chalky pick. He's just one of the best corners in football when he's healthy. So he's the fuel that runs the secondary. I got to go with Jalen Ramsey, man. But I don't hate the Javon Holland pick, to be honest with you. He is a solid player. All right, Drock, what do you got?
What's up, Felters?
Hey.
No, it's fine. Not funny. All right. Tyreek Hill to have a 200-plus receiving yard regular season game at plus 275. Slam it!
200 yards in a game. That is certainly possible. I love it, actually. He could, he could score. He could score from 70 in the first quarter, and you're like, all right, we're looking pretty good. You know,
180-yard reception when they're on the 20. I mean, dude, anything's possible.
Especially if they're trying to get him to 2K again, and he's on track. Like it could definitely happen. At plus 275. I mean, I like that. I like that a lot, Drock.